Hello guys, it's Ryan Ho, back to another video. Today I want to talk about 3 IEMs that are really good for not only music listening, but gaming, story mode gaming, or competitive gaming. I have one for you. Now, these 3 on the table are really cool. My favorite one is actually the Septet right here. The Septet is honestly a very nice sounding IEM. This thing has 7 drivers, hence the name Septet. And of those 7 drivers, it's actually called a quad bird, which means there's 4 different drivers that it integrates in there. So basically it uses 1 dynamic driver for the bass, 3 BA drivers for the mid-range, then it has a micro planar driver for the treble, and even higher in the treble they use a piezoelectric driver. So each one of these drivers really kind of hone in on their kind of special characteristics that makes it really good. For example, the dynamic driver kind of has it in the name. It sounds very dynamic. It hits really hard. It gives you that nice like vibrating bass that people like to hear. The BA drivers are very kind of detailed. A lot of the studio monitors use them because I think they're just more detailed sounding than a dynamic driver, and so they have a lot of detail that people like. But then we get to like the higher frequencies, like the planar drivers, they're really good at playing the fine details really well without kind of breaking. They can also move fast enough, I think, to play the treble very cleanly. That's kind of why I always like planar drivers. I think if you watch anything on my channel, I'm always a very big fan of planars. And then the piezoelectric are even better, I guess, at playing higher frequencies because they've always used it for the even higher frequency. So honestly, it's a very good combination of 4 different drivers, 7 drivers, all for I think $270. So it's a pretty good like configuration for the amount of drivers and what you're getting. And I can kind of tell you that it sounds honestly really good. I think it's my favorite in the sense of just detail and the things it does. And I forgot to mention that this also is actually an open back design. So if you actually look at it, you can see that there is actually holes on top of it, and it gives it a better, I think, sound shade imaging. It actually helps with the bass as well because it allows the bass to not sound like it's trapped in your ear, but the bass sounds much more natural, like speakers. It kind of flows out, and the sound also kind of flows out more naturally too because it's not just like contained in your ear. It kind of sounds like the music kind of extends outward more. So I feel like the kind of open back nature of this actually helps this even elevate it even further beyond. And I think those are the kind of the main reasons why I like this one, right? The Kiwi Etude is the cheapest one on the table. It's in the $120 mark. I think it's the best looking one on the table if you kind of like, I guess, more flashy jewelry. It almost reminds me of like the Lakers colors, honestly. Living in Los Angeles, you got some kind of purple, some gold. But yeah, it's a very nice looking IEM. And the thing that makes this one kind of special is that it actually has a, I guess, bone conduction vibration type of driver in there. You can actually feel it, and you can actually even hear it too. You can like hear when you tap it, it literally just like shakes and vibrates. It's very interesting when you're playing music and stuff. It actually shakes your ears a lot too. So I think the vibration definitely does something and definitely gives it a more, I guess, tactile experience. Taking all the notes kind of have a little bit more life to them. It's actually interesting that if you actually look on a graph, the measurements of it, you can actually see the bass and how it's moving. It actually looks funny on a graph, but in real life it just sounds normal. But you can definitely tell that the bone connection stuff is actually in there. The easiest way, like I said, is just tap it. You'll definitely hear it shake, and that's something that other IEMs don't do. I think that's kind of its uniqueness, is that it has that kind of driver in it, and honestly it looks good. For me, I would say this one is, like I said, the best looker. And then of course we have another one on the table. This is the Kiwi Astral. This is also in like 7 driver IEM. I think this is the good one if you really want to kind of listen to a lot of music, sound very natural, has a really good bass to it as well. And if you like your story mode games, this is the one I definitely recommend. The Astral, I feel like, just really excels at sounding very natural. I would say the overall qualities that it kind of exhibits is it's probably the most, I guess, balanced, well-tuned one of the ones on the table. It reminds me of a lot of, I guess, what people call the, I guess, JM4. There's so many names for it, but it's like the best of the new tuning, which is very focused on a lot of mid-range vocal forward type of sound, good bass, and then the treble doesn't come across bright at all. So this is a very nice and very fun IEM. I think it's gonna be probably the one that most people are gonna like, to be honest. If I don't know who you are, you want to pick one of these on the table, you pick this one up, you're probably gonna like this a lot. I was listening to some songs. I just went to see Jai Wolf in LA, and I was listening to Indian Summer. I played that song on this, and honestly, this thing plays it really well. It sounds very natural, just how the song sounds like in real life. So I feel like if you're looking for that really, really kind of natural, very fun sound too, because this thing is not bass light, it has a good bass to it as well, then I think this is definitely the one to go for. And then I would say the Septet for me is, I would say it's probably the most technical. Now, what does that mean? I think if you're an audiophile, you're looking for something that's very, I guess, good, unique, and you can definitely tell the difference between like soundstage and imaging. Like for me, this one, like I played games, and even if you're not just playing games, like you're in studio, you're trying to figure out where things are placed in like a 3D space. This one does it so well. I can literally hear like enemies behind the walls, above me, below me, around me, like pinpoint precisely. It's pretty insane, honestly. I could tell exactly how far they are, the depth to it as well. So this thing is like laser precise. Like if I was just rating it for like gaming, it's like a 9.5 out of 10. Like this is a very, very high recommendation for me, and it's how well it performs. It performs so well that the other two don't really compare to it. In my opinion, this thing is just laser precise, and I feel like that helps a lot when you're listening to music, because it puts everything in a very natural, where you would kind of hear it type of place, and I feel like it adds to this immersive and like believable kind of environment when you're listening to music. So I think I like that the most, honestly, about this IEM. But like I mentioned earlier, the bass really just doesn't sound like it doesn't sound like it's trapped in a room and reverberating. It just sounds like the bass plays, it's very clean, and it kind of just naturally kind of fades away. So it has a lot of these attributes, I think, due to the design of it, that make it just sound so good. And so that's probably the other parts that I really like about it. And I do think it's the most detailed and cleanest sounding. Now, there's a difference between tuning and detail. I always talk about that. I think the Astral still, for most people, are gonna like it just because the tuning is so good. And it's not like it's not detailed, but I think that the Astral has better, I guess, upper mid-range, basically a lot of female vocals when they're talk. The treble just sounds a little bit cleaner and clearer on the Astral. I think that's what gives it its kind of advantage. But I think the Septet is still overall the more technical sounding IEM for a lot of people. So if you're like a hardcore audiophile, you're probably gonna like this one too, just like me. And then of course these two actually feature these swappable cables. So these two cables you can kind of just take off and then switch it into a 3.5 millimeter, and it comes with a balance cable in its price. So I think that's a nice addition that these things have. I guess I don't remember Kiwi having this in the past, so I think this is a newer thing they've had, and I kind of down for it, honestly. At this price point, having this type of cable is honestly really good. A nice balance cable, right? And then of course the Etude doesn't really have that because it's, it's cheaper, right? And then, for me, the Etude just rounds out the last place for me, just because I just don't think it just sounds as detailed as the other ones. It does have a Beryllium dynamic driver in it, and it has 3 BA drivers, but I don't know. I feel like maybe the vibration driver, but it just simply doesn't sound as detailed, as technical. And I think the soundstage imaging isn't as good either. Like I wouldn't recommend it for gaming. I would say the Astral itself is pretty decent, but still nowhere close to the level of the Septet. For gaming, I'd probably give this like a, I don't know, 6 maybe. It's usable, but it's definitely not gonna be my first pick, unlike the Septet, right? When it comes to the actual, like what they come with in the box, so we have the tips, right? So you get a bunch of black tips with the Septet, but essentially I like the skinny one that kind of, encloses itself in the middle, not the big wide one. So I think that's the best one. This one, I felt like I got the best bass out of the Septet because it was open back. This one seems to give me the best bass performance, so I recommend that tip. The Astral only comes with a blue tip, so it doesn't really matter which one you pick. For the tips up for the Etude, I really like the white ones that they come with. I think these are the brightest ones. I think it really sounds the best if you're trying to hear kind of the treble. The black tips are a little bit more, I guess, darker sounding, and then the red ones are too dark sounding for me personally. But you get 3 tips for this one, which is kind of nice. And the other thing I want to talk about the Etude is this one sounds just like a Harman Target type of sound. So you're really getting like the bass, and then you're getting the treble, and then the mid-range kind of takes a step back. I think a lot of times Harman Target in IEM world just means the mid-range is a step back, so it's basically just V-shaped. So that's the type of sound that you're getting, with the Astral being the most modern tuning, I guess, the new target people call it, with a lot of mid-range, so very, very good. And then this one seems to be somewhere like a less trebly Astral, so pretty balanced through the bass and the mid-range. You get very good sub bass. You can definitely hear it. Very deep bass. I think the sub bass is a lot better than the Etude, and the Astral is very close. But I feel like the Septet still has just the advantage. But good sub bass, good mid range. The treble of some of the female vocals is just slightly more relaxed on this one. But yeah, it's honestly pretty nice. So personally, between the Astral and the Septet, they're both kind of the same price, $300 to $270, very close. I think the Septet is better in some ways. I think for people who are into competitive gaming, this one obviously is better. It's like one of the best ones I ever used. If you're into imaging, just like, studio, just wanting to listen to things and figure out where they are, or just have a natural positioning, this thing really does it well. I think this open back nature really kind of helps it sound just a lot better, in my opinion. It makes these sounds extend better. They don't sound like they're trapped in a small room. And it just sounds a little bit more natural sounding. Very good detail with that quad bridge kind of design as well. I feel like it really does really, really well. And overall, the tuning, has a good bass, good sub bass, very detailed. The mid range is there. The treble is just a little bit less emphasized than something like the Astral, which sounds just more natural to me in the treble. But besides that, I feel like this is the most technical, most unique, and most impressive one, I think. For the audiophiles, I feel like this is the one I would go for. But if you were kind of into just, listening to music actually sounding the most natural, this thing has a really fun bass to it that's very emphasized. You can hear the sub bass. This is, the most, I guess, best tuning of the bunch. It's the most modern tuning. People call it, I think, the JM4 or whatever they want to call it. But this is the best tuning mid-range focus with a treble that's not overly forward at all, very detailed. I think the soundstage imaging isn't as good as something like the Septet, but overall, I think the tuning will win a lot of people over, and that's why I think this is probably the one that most people who are just entering the hobby or just want the most natural sound will probably gonna like the most, honestly. So this is I guess the popular choice and the most fun sounding, I guess, would be this one. And then the Etude, what does Etude do? It has a bone conduction drivers in there. It's very special. It kind of shakes your ears. I think it's the most, I guess, jewelry, kind of cool, unique looking one as well. I think it pulls the looks off pretty well. Obviously, technically wise, this doesn't compare to the other two. I think it really is behind in that sense because, well, they just have the price. So it doesn't have as much fancy driver configurations with, one dynamic and 3 BA. It does have a beryllium dynamic driver, which is interesting, but I don't really feel like it's doing anything, I guess, special in this case. I think the name of this, I guess, show really is that kind of bone conduction or vibration kind of driver in there. I feel like that kind of is what makes it special. If you want to hear that, this one definitely has that. The imaging itself is also not as good as even the Astral, definitely nowhere close in performance to something like the Septet, but overall a decent pick for a nice looking IEM, but I would definitely choose the other two if I had, I guess, more money to spend, honestly. Anyways, I hope that helped you guys. I will leave links in the description below to Linsel, who kind of provide these for review. If you guys do purchase these, it will help support my channel if you are actually interested. So check out my channel. I have other reviews of other IEMs on there as well. And I'm going to have more IEMs that I have kind of review. I have a lot more coming actually. So you guys definitely want to subscribe so don't miss out on that. And I'll see you guys in my next video.